Hello, welcome back to TSC Talks, the podcast inspired by the condition known as tuberous sclerosis complex. My name is Jill Woodworth, and I am your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, my guest on the podcast is the awesome and amazing Janna Champagne, Nurse Janna. She has educated thousands of patients, helping them optimize their cannabis therapy outcomes through individualized and a well-informed approach. She's gained extensive clinical application knowledge through her work, including individual considerations of cannabis therapy and which products might fit a patient's best situation. She also is now on the graduate faculty at John Patrick University. She is the founder of the nonprofit Autism Safe Haven. She provides education for patients, medical professionals, and industry staff, symptom-targeted medical cannabis formulating. She is research, review, written content author, and prominent cannabis advocate. Her program, Autism Safe Haven, which we are going to dig in, get in the weeds, talk about on this podcast, providing dignified living options for those with autism, including cannabis inclusion, focus on optimal health, quality of life, and functioning. Janna started out getting into the cannabis industry when she had her own health crisis that led her to use cannabis as medicine and then help others. She went into growing and also wanting to help her daughter avoid the influx of pharmaceuticals that is common with an autism diagnosis, particularly when periods start, menstruation, and behavior often escalates. I know we had issues with that with my own offspring who have tuberous sclerosis, and then the hormones start, and there's this whole madness that occurs, and the Western medicine solution to that, and I'm not faulting it, I just don't think we figured it out, this whole body thing, is to throw more pharma at it, and that almost creates a perfect storm of threads that are really hard to unwind when you want to figure out another way. So, Jan is a true leader, an inspiration to me, a friend. I appreciate her so much for coming on and talking about this, maintaining a positive attitude throughout all the challenges we've had lately in our society, her own personal challenges with the cannabis nursing in Oregon, her ability to work with patients being changed by legislation. I'm not going into the details on that. I don't know them all. We did discuss that a little bit and how difficult that was and how she was able to pivot into different roles in the industry. So I think you're going to enjoy this. I know I did. I learned a lot, and having a daughter who is in a group home who I cannot use cannabinoid medicine with, I found this to be some of the most hopeful information that I've gotten in a long time, that this is possible, and Janna's plans are to get her own initial facility up and running and then to duplicate the model across the country. So that's coming up right now. I do want to mention prior to her was Nurse Carrie Lee, a cannabis nurse from rural Iowa who switched careers midlife, went into nursing, and then ended up in cannabis nursing, her soul's calling. That's an excellent podcast. I want to mention our virtual holiday market, which we thought we'd start right after Thanksgiving, but we decided to consolidate it to make it more efficient and more professional, and put more of our energies into a focused, shorter segment. So it's launching December 12th. If you're interested in selling your health-related, cannabis-related products in virtually, or your services related to that or other services health-related, reach out, admin@TSC Talks. We still are looking for people to get involved, and we have lots of options and ways to get involved besides just selling. So we're excited about that. And coming up on the podcast after Janna is Mike Robinson. He is one of our special contributors, and he's going to give you an update on what he's been doing in the industry with his new publications and his new giveaway. So stay tuned for all that. Thanks so much for tuning in, and take it away, Janna. Thank you, Janna Champagne, for being on TSC Talks. You were our guest it's been at least a little over a year ago. And since then, you've really kind of developed Autism Safe Haven. I think you were kind of thinking about it back then, but I was going back through our old interview and we didn't really talk. We talked more about integrated holistic care and your journey from becoming a cannabis patient and your own health and then your daughter. So why don't you just start out and give a little bit of information about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into your story. And
yeah, of course. And thank you for having me again, Jill. I know it's been a little while and there's a lot of new stuff to talk about. So I'm a cannabis nurse full-time, and I have come into this industry as a patient. I have benefited greatly from cannabis as medicine, as has my daughter. Our stories are very widely available if you want more detail on that. And just by following patient needs, I progressed from a patient to a grower to helping patients to now I'm beginning to educate medical professionals about cannabis. And another project I'm working on is improving the accessibility of cannabis-inclusive autism care resources. My daughter is, with her autism, and she's 18 years of age and, ready to move on in life. And there really are no resources. So I'm building this for her and for other children that rely on cannabis for their quality of life and as their medicine, and to allow them access to their chosen medicine, while also receiving the care that they require. So that's really the purpose of Autism Safe Haven.
Yeah, I love it. I read the talk that you had. I put everything into my Otter and transcribe it so I do better reading stuff. And I'm just like, it's just exactly like if I could have thought of it. I mean, it's just beautiful what you're putting together, and so needed, especially, now I've started, I think the last time we talked, I hadn't started using cannabis with any of my own children, and now I have, and the difference is like, there's just no turning back. So yeah, so I'm really inspired by you and just impressed with everything that you've done. So yeah, I guess your story with cannabis is available online, but you were patient, you came into it as a patient yourself. So tell me a little bit about your daughter and the autism diagnosis and how you started using cannabis with her.
So my daughter didn't begin using cannabis until she entered puberty and suffered what we call a puberty crisis. It's common to about half of kids with autism, where with puberty onset come all of a sudden really dramatic and extreme behaviors. And in her case, it was self-injury and aggressive behaviors towards others, specifically those of authority like parents or caregivers, and also property destruction. She basically destroyed my house. And so, at one point in 2015, for 3 months, she was living part-time in a separate home from me with a caregiver. And so we just narrowly missed her requiring out-of-home placement due to those behaviors for safety reasons, and cannabis spared her that. So that is really a big part of why I'm so passionate about cannabis for autism, and ensuring that those that have come to rely on cannabis, to improve their quality of life and their function and reduce the pharmaceuticals, which we know have such horrific side effects for many, to allow them that right while in a home placement. And, currently the trend is that parents of kids with autism sometimes even have to leave their own state and their home and their family and go to a legal state in order to access cannabis for their kids with autism, despite it having an unsurpassed safety profile, and, just being a lot more effective for most in these scenarios. So it really is not in the best interest of the patients.
Right, yeah.
Something to fix that problem.
I think it's hard for people that aren't familiar with, the situations that you've been in, and a lot of people that have children on the autism spectrum or similar conditions, the extremes of behavior, and the desperation that the positions that you're in, and then to find this substance that kind of like makes life livable, and not to be able to really use it without jumping through like 80,000 hoops. I find it really frustrating, I guess would be the word. I'm frustrated all the time by the cognitive dissonance that's going on. And, I don't have to really say much more about that. So you started out and as a nurse, and then your business, integrated holistic care. How does that play into your journey and your path?
Integrated care, I founded in 2015 to provide holistic health education to patients. And it was based largely on on the answers I had found, after being very disenchanted with mainstream approaches for my own health, the answers that I found to promote health and help regain balance in my own life and with my health. And so that turned into largely consulting with patients about cannabis therapy. And unfortunately, about a year ago, in November of 2019, the Oregon State Board of Nursing declared that they were actively rejecting the National Council of State Boards of Nursing guidelines, the NCSBN guidelines for nurses working in the cannabis industry, which is what I was abiding by through that business, and had 3 nurses on staff also doing the same work. And so basically I was at the meeting with my name and my face on the Zoom screen talking about my work with patients when they announced that nurses in Oregon are no longer allowed to do this.
Oh my goodness.
I basically left, it puts our license in jeopardy if we do.
Okay.
I walked away feeling like I had a target on my back, and all of my nurses quit because they're all Oregon licensed. And so it became, I begrudgingly had to back away from my focus of working directly with patients, and began to think, okay, so what can I do? I can educate medical professionals. And so I launched some accredited content through Cannabis Nurses Network to teach nurses how to work with patients around the cannabis space, using the NCSBN guidelines. And then that actually has led to now I'm officially faculty at John Patrick University through the Institute of Cannabinoid Medicine, and will be teaching my first college level course starting January 11th of 2020.
Congratulations.
Formulations. It's John Patrick University. Thank you. And I'm teaching nutrition students about cannabis as vital nutrients, which I think is just amazing. We're bringing it into the integrative nutrition program and also into their oncology programs. I'm like, this is just, it's a beautiful.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I'm very excited to be working with future practitioners and teaching them about cannabis.
And what a nice way to, be actually able to influence in a different way than, one-on-one with patients. And to have lost that, that sounds like really tough. And then you pivoted and walked into something else, and gives you more credibility for everything you're doing. I mean, there's not that many cannabis universities, or that have a component.
And it will reach more patients than I ever could alone. So I feel really good about that. Like I'm still mad for Oregon patients and the disservice that OSBN's decision has impacted them. We were filling a gap. The doctors don't teach the patient. Walk away from their OMM card with a signature, and then they're left to rely on internet or family and friends or bud tender advice.
Right.
And how to get the best medical outcomes of their cannabis. And none of those sources know best how to work around things like pharmaceuticals or what the research supports for their specific indications. So it's really put them in a bind.
Wow. Do you have any idea why that happened? I mean, not to segue too much, but I'm curious. No.
All I can say is that OSBN has not been receptive to communication or education on the topic. And it's my paradigm that their decision actually, it's funny because they have this clause in their statement, which is open source online on the OSBN website. And so far, we haven't heard of any patients being harmed by being educated by a nurse about cannabis. And I'm thinking they're putting patients at higher risk.
Yeah.
Because we were filling that educational gap. And the biggest risk of harm comes from combining pharmaceuticals with cannabis. And bud tenders are not educated on that topic.
Yeah, not even.
That's like the perfect niche for nurses to fill, and they've taken us away from patients. And so it's that part of it was really difficult to overcome as a patient myself, as a patient advocate. I was so angry, and it did take me a couple of months to finally say, fine, I need to stop doing this, basically because I need to start a nursing agency for Autism Safe Haven, and I need my license to be in good standing for that. So that was really when I went, fine, I'll stop.
Whatever, geez. Yeah, though, you're so right. I mean, it is such a niche, and there's so few people that know like what you know. And there's so many parents out there that I mean, I don't know whether they know it yet, but they need to know. It's the way I feel like, I see a lot of the boards for tuberous sclerosis, and I really had to disengage from a lot of it because it was just talking about pharma, and just a real, like, people are just frustrated and desperate. And, they're putting their hope on these pharmaceuticals. Like, what's the next thing that we can be prescribed that's going to save us, kind of thing. Like, there's a mindset, that I'm sure you're aware of. So, and breaking through that is really tough because, as you know, when your kid is seizing or your kid is in the middle of a behavior, you want to stop it now. So, yeah, talk to me a little bit about pharmaceuticals and why they're so problematic for individuals with autism and how you've been able to transition your daughter and, just a piece about that, if you can.
Well, yeah, and my daughter, just to be clear, has not been on a lot of pharmaceuticals. Even during her crisis, I was very resistant.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that. I forgot. Yeah, okay.
In the pharmaceutical world, I was actually a mainstream critical care hospital nurse giving pharmaceuticals every day as my work until I got sick. And then it was like, whoa, wait a minute, pharmaceuticals are not the answer. So that was more the realization.
Okay, yeah.
But I do work with a lot of kids with autism. That's one of my specialties in cannabis. And the problem is that a lot of times they're using the mental health medications for behavior, trying to interpret the behavior as communication, which is what my belief is that, especially in these kids that have limited verbal abilities or other challenges and they're not able to communicate clearly. Behavior is their communication. And if you can figure out what's triggering the behavior and address that,
instead of band-aiding it
and just throwing behavioral medications at these kids, which, by the way, horrible side effects. I mean, extrapyramidal symptoms, enough said, right?
Enough said.
But the nice thing is a lot of times when these kids add cannabis and we're addressing things like their underlying pain issues, which the mental health meds are not going to touch. Yeah. It actually reduces their behaviors, reduces their reliance on the medications. They end up with fewer side effects, better quality of life, and better function as a result. That's totally commonplace.
Yeah.
Add cannabis to an autism regimen.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I've observed. And I'm not even got my son completely off pharma. It's just the other piece of it is, I'm sure you see a lot of kids who have been subject to a lot of pharma. And then, there are sometimes interactions with CBD and pharmaceuticals. So it almost becomes more complicated for some people unless they have someone to guide them through that because, yeah.
That's where cannabis come in. We're good at that piece. But,
yeah. Yes.
SSRIs are, one of the mental health meds that you have to be super careful with combining with CBD.
Really?
Get too much serotonin. CBD increases serotonin. SSRIs increase serotonin. You get too much serotonin and it can be miserable. So it's always about balance. And that's part of the problem with these mental health pharmaceuticals being thrown at these kids is they're not doing any objective lab work or any objective kind of assessing to see which medication might be the best fit. They're just kind of guessing, oh, well, you have these symptoms, we'll throw this one at it.
Yeah, and it's not looking at the whole person.
Right. Same problem. If a child already has high serotonin and they throw an SSRI at them, they're going to end up with too much serotonin and worsen behaviors and aggression and anxiety and irritation. So right. It's, I think there's a lot of that happening as well. And not to mention, there was one child that I worked with that was prescribed benzodiazepines multiple times a day, and he went into crisis and ended up in the ER. And they ran his blood and actually accused mom of non-compliance with his medications because he came back negative for benzodiazepines. And they pushed Ativan, checked again, he's still negative for benzodiazepines. So it's like, sometimes kids with autism don't metabolize things like we think they might. And then, so it's not turning into this metabolite that they're looking for to screen for benzos. So what is it turning into? And is that causing more problems? Like, there's so many unknowns. We've done no testing or research on these medications on children in general, much less kids with autism. Yeah. We don't know the long-term effects of them. The effects we do know are horrific. There's cases where, with the extrapyramidal symptoms, they get these grimaces and tics and all kinds of horrible side effects. And sometimes they'll take the medication that starts and they stop the meds right away, but that side effect can be permanent.
It's permanent. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty terrifying.
When we have cannabis with this unsurpassed safety profile, why are we not using that as our first resort? You know, as medical professionals, we take an oath to weigh risk versus benefit for our patients and guide them appropriately. And when you include cannabis in that assessment, it's the logical first choice.
Right. And when you can you get people to see that when you're, you know, teaching, and how hard has it been for you to break through those roadblocks with mindset?
Kind of depends on the person. I've really gotten to where there's enough people actively seeking this information that reach out to me that I don't have to go out trying to convince people that
you don't have to sell them. Yeah.
So if they're stuck in the stigma and they're stuck in that paradigm, let them be.
Yeah.
When they're ready, I'm here.
Exactly. It has to be that way. It can't be something that, you know, I've tried to like browbeat people with information when I first realized, you know, how much better it was. And that's just doesn't work.
It really doesn't. You know, the stigma is real, but it doesn't fit the science. It doesn't fit the facts. It doesn't fit the ethical medical paradigm and approach, which is risk versus benefit, like I was saying. And so, you know, now with teaching medical professionals, one of the most powerful tools is patient outcomes and patient testimonies. So many medical professionals have reached out to me after I worked with their patient. Their patient went to them and said, take me off these meds. And they'll call me and say, what are you doing?
I've heard that from other nurses.
Better, and they're off their meds. So it's, you know, there's different ways to kind of crack open those medical paradigms as well. And then say, hey, did you know there's tens of thousands of solid research studies? We're not talking about High Times Magazine articles. We're talking about serious science.
Yes.
Go look for yourself and realize cannabis meets 0 of the 3 criteria for Schedule 1, yet it's there 30 years after we had a judge agree with us that it should be descheduled. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's the number 1 competitor to all pharmaceuticals.
Right.
So much profit and political entanglement in those funds that cannabis is stuck. And is that in the best interest of our patients? Absolutely not.
Right.
This dichotomy of freely allowing opioid medications, which are killing patients every hour of every day, but oh, God forbid we allow cannabis. I mean, come on.
I know. And, you know, I think the long-term... What? Say that again?
It's killed nobody ever.
Yeah, I know. And we have, okay, how long what's the history of cannabis? It's like 5,000 BC or something. You know, we have the data, people. It's not like we have that data for pharmaceuticals. Well, we have 20 years maybe. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
It's not logical. It's political and it's profit-driven, and that needs to change.
Yes, it really does. It's depressing in a lot of ways. And, you know, to carry that around and to continue to, it's just something that's always there, that like knowing that we have to just kind of live with this untruth, so to speak.
It's a stigma. It's a stigma. It's propaganda, you know, and I've lived it in my own family. I mean, I have split relations with my family over cannabis because my dad is a baby boomer and he was a minister turned prison guard. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room
Wow.
in time to accept cannabis as medicine and accept, you know, even seeing my improved medical outcomes, accepting that was why.
Really? Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. My brother is military.
That's the lesson. And so don't even waste your time.
I know. Plant the seed. That's exactly it. You know, I've worked with my mother was very resistant, but slowly she's starting to come around. And, you know, I have to respect, I think sometimes I want everybody to hurry up already, but just respect that she's been brainwashed or whatever for a far longer than I have. So it's some deep grooves in the neurochemistry or whatever.
Yeah. And nobody likes to hear that they were duped.
Exactly.
About to like, oh no, I'm too smart to be fooled by that. Well, actually.
Yep.
They were determined to fool you, so there was that piece too, you know.
Right.
It spared half a dozen big industries were spared from hemp competition in 1937 when they passed the Marijuana Act. Paper, lumber, fuel,
cotton, oil,
medicine. What else? I mean, come on. It's money driven. It's
money driven. I know. And so I guess to get into Autism Safe Haven, tell me about how you have gotten it off, where you are and what you're doing with that and how it looks.
Okay, well, we have our nonprofit designation. Our 501c3 application is just being submitted, I think, this week. So we're working on that piece. We have the first home, which has already been extensively reinforced for autism behaviors, thanks to my daughter and us having to repair the
So
damage.
your home is the model.
It's the first one. Yes.
And what did you have to do to make it, safe and compliant, so it could be used in that way?
Well, the remodel so far, and this was done, like I said, to repair once she calmed her behaviors back in 2016, I think is when we remodeled. We have tempered glass windows that are unbreakable. We have a 6-foot fence around the property. We have walls that are literally 1/4-inch plywood with beadboard over the top, so indestructible. Lots of other ADA types of accommodations, like a flood-proof bathroom. And so it's really just meant to, and all without compromising its appearance as a home versus like a commercial facility. Most people wouldn't even know unless I told them. Solid wood doors, not the hollow ones, so they can't be kicked. And so basically what we're wanting to do with this model is share it with other children in the community that have behavioral needs. And it's not just about the cannabis therapy, although that is one aspect, and it's cannabis inclusive, which is really what makes it unique. We're going to have nurses or caregivers that are going to be able to administer the cannabis in the home. So the parent doesn't have to be on call to do that piece, like is the current trend with the homes here.
Okay,
so that's really big, but we're also bringing in ABA therapy, and every resident will have an individualized behavior plan. The caregivers will be trained on that. So it's very proactive, very positive motivation. Viewing behaviors as communication. Let's get to the root of the problem with these kids. It's really compassionate care. So many kids with autism, their behaviors mellow out when you treat them for pain.
Do you have an example, like either with someone you've worked with, where you discovered, well, I guess your own daughter with menstruation? I think that's really, it speaks to the whole interconnectivity of the microbiome and everything that we're really not able to address in institutionalized medicine so much. So,
right, it's a kinder approach, and we can even get into genetic assessment and nutrigenomics and helping to offset some of the genetic mutation contributors to their imbalances. So I mean, we can do a lot that's very targeted specifically for autism. And really the goal is to be seeing those behaviors as communication and figuring out what is the problem. And so often these kids with autism have systemic inflammation from the microbiome imbalances and the gut neuroimmune triad that's they're all linked and they're all dysfunctional, and it's overlooked by mainstream medicine a lot. And so oftentimes autism entails systemic pain, and these kids that can't communicate pain, it's going to come out as behaviors. So when you treat a kid with autism with a good pain strain of cannabis, oftentimes that in itself will mellow their behaviors because they're not painful anymore. And when you look that way, like, this is compassionate care, not treating that. Imagine if that was a child that could tell you they were in pain and you're not treating it. That would be neglect, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a cohort of in the autism community that believes that intervening medically with autism is not allowing them to be their best personality or something of that nature. It's like we're trying to change them.
Okay.
This is compassionate approach. This is compassionate care. If somebody's in pain, whether or not they can tell you, you should be able to figure it out and treat it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Wow. So you're saying like the quirks of personality that might be pain initiated some people are wanting that to be just kind of part of their personality almost. Yeah.
Just acknowledging that there's a group in this autism community that doesn't believe in treating autism from a medical approach. They believe it's a neurodiversity. What I see and what I'm talking about are these severe kids that are limited to minimal verbal and have high behaviors, and they're self-injurious, and they don't have good quality of life. What we're doing is giving them quality of life. We're not trying to change who they are or change their autism, which is often not a realistic goal anyway.
Right,
Which
right.
improve their quality of life and give them better function and give them purpose and help them meet their potential.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
want to be really clear about that piece too.
Right.
So we don't get any backlash.
Yeah, I think presumption of competence is something that I learned from other TSC moms, like, and that's something that I really like. For instance, with my son, he's kind of been classified with a global intellectual disability, which, based on his history, there were so many things that happened. I always kind of held on to the idea that it was more a function of what all the pharmaceuticals and the seizures and all that had happened, rather than something that couldn't be chipped away at. And indeed, when cannabis was initiated, now it looks much more like learning disabilities. It's not so global. And to me, that's like, as a human being, we should be allowed to be the best that we can be. Sure, he's not going to be a rocket scientist, or sure he's not, but to know about these things and to not offer them to this population is just, it's unconscionable. And also the burden on society, if you think about it, if you're caring for your child in your home as opposed to putting them into a facility, which it's far less expensive. We're saving the government, money by taking care of our children and trying to make it work with, on a shoestring, when, and so really I feel like sometimes like they should be paying us for, for the difference between, placing them in a home. But it's been a big wake up call for me, Janna. So, your words are just like, I guess, just wonderful to hear, because there's not that many people that really understand at such a deep level how important this is. So,
no, and I'm so glad that you get it. We're definitely kindred special needs moms, and on kindred missions to help our kids. And I just think until we get these kids what they need to be comfortable and be most functional and reduce their anxiety and reduce their seizures and reduce the distractibility and the overwhelm and the overstimulation in their brains, until we can address some of those things, they can't be their best self.
Yeah, and it's hard to live with that. It's hard to watch your child suffer when I think that's a big piece of it too. Watching somebody take a bunch of pills when you can't change, because of legal restrictions or something. So, and it wears on your psyche, I'd say, for people.
So helpless.
Helpless. Circling the drain of despair. Somebody said that, and it's so true. You can really get caught there. So
one of the reasons I love cannabis, because it's so great for alleviating these parents that are in these families that are in crisis situations, and they're right on that edge of dramatic measures to try to amend their situation, and cannabis can do that. But not only
it can.
Is it a great tool for quick onset, especially like the sublinguals or the inhalants are great for stopping or calming a behavior in progress, keeping it from going full tilt. But it's also safe, and it's also addressing in autism an underlying deficiency called endocannabinoid deficiency.
Okay.
So not only is it a great tool for mitigating those symptoms, but it's actually helping to target the underlying cause of the symptoms. So it's huge.
So yeah, just for anybody that's not aware of what the endocannabinoid system and deficiency, could you just briefly?
Sure. So our endocannabinoid system, it was discovered in the 90s, and unfortunately, as of today, I have my college course launching in January, but as of today, most medical and nursing schools do not teach about the endocannabinoid science. And so this explains why so many medical professionals, when you say, hey, what about cannabis? They think it's snake oil. All they hear is it's good for everything. But what they don't understand is that we make cannabinoids in our bodies called endocannabinoids. And they exactly mimic the cannabinoids in the plant. Oh, and they happen to be vital nutrients. And when we make enough of these, the result is that it keeps our bodies in balance. It's this term we call homeostasis.
Homeostasis. Mm-hmm.
Super important. And when you consider that the underlying cause of all disease or all chronic illness as underlying imbalances,
Mm-hmm.
it explains how it can help so many different things. Because the endocannabinoid system is throughout the body. It interacts with every other system of the body and promotes balance.
Mm-hmm. So the minute that your endocannabinoid system takes a hit, it's going to be off balance, and therefore it makes you susceptible to diseases and all kinds of chronic health problems, I would say.
When we can't produce enough endocannabinoids, we end up with imbalances that we label with a disease name, but it's also endocannabinoid deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And the cannabinoids in the plant exactly mimic these cannabinoids we make.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we supplement from the plant when we can't make enough, and it helps fill that deficiency.
Yeah, to me, it seems like for so many, we're trying to override nature and the plants as guides instead of trying to impose our mind and our intelligence and our brilliance instead of following these plant allies. It sounds kind of hippie-ish, but
it's pure human ego to think we can improve upon the perfection of nature and thousands of years of evolution with our big toys.
I know.
Machines. I'm sorry. We just, over and over and over, we're seeing that whole plant spectrum products are far superior than the human altered ones.
Yes. Why is whole plant a better option?
Oh gosh, here we go. So my nurses and I created what we call the flow criteria.
Okay.
Patients, and this, we've never benefited from the sales of any product ever. So it's not about commissions. It's about what's best for our patients.
Mm-hmm.
They seek our advice objectively to tell them what is the best fit for their situation. That was our job. And so we always taught flower-derived, lab-tested, organic, and whole plant spectrum is what you want for medicine. And this is what the research supports as well as we have seen in patient outcomes, is that when you have a human altered form of cannabis, whether it's nanodized or liposomal or CO2 or isolate, basically they're taking, the 500 plus compounds that you find in the cannabis flower and stripping away most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like CO2 extract usually is about a dozen compounds in the final product. Isolate is one. So what we recommend are whole plant spectrum products, which are food grade ethanol extracted or infused.
Mm-hmm.
Those retain hundreds of compounds from that flower. And with all of those compounds, there's a synergy we call the entourage effect. And it optimizes medical outcomes. It optimizes the response in the body too. So like a couple of things about it. What the research says is that they compared CO2 versus whole plant spectrum. The CO2 worked less effectively and the whole plant spectrum beat it at 20 to 25% of the dose with better response. So there's cost savings there for the patient as well. And then there's also the bell curve response, which another study found with isolate, as you increase the dose, it'll peak, fall off, and stop working.
Is that due to the receptors tolerance type of, I don't know whether that's the right word, but I've heard that, your receptors they need changed up. They need the plant to figure out what it needs, what cannabinoid to fit in there. That's kind of how I think about it. Like,
it's lack of is what it really is. Because with CO2, they remove the bioflavonoids, the antioxidants, the essential fatty acids, the chlorophyll. Hundreds of compounds are removed.
Okay.
And it's down to about a dozen compounds, usually an isolate, cannabinoid, and some terpenes. So when you compare them, they work very differently in the body. And what they found was that, there was this bell curve response with CO2, but with whole plant spectrum, as you increase the dose, the effect increases. And they were measuring TNFA, which is an inflammatory marker in the body. So very clearly, and what this translates to for me as a nurse, I work with patients that sometimes need very intensive dosing for things like cancer or autoimmune. They need, and even autism, sometimes they need really high doses. So with that high dosing, they could actually fall on the opposite side of this bell curve and be spending a ton of money and getting little to no benefit from it. So it can literally make or break the patient's response. And we found this naturally through our work with patients and working with different products. Like, wait a minute, this one works differently. Why is that? And that's what prompted my research into the difference and helping learn and teach patients what to seek for medicine.
Wow. Yeah, thanks. That's really good. I don't think I've heard that detailed an explanation of the whole plant. And I think what I see with Epidiolex is a lot of side effects, a lot of people complaining, and I'm always like, well, I wonder what 10 other medications are being used that are interacting that nobody's bothered to investigate. So yeah, I see that people complaining about diarrhea, and I'll always go on and say, well, it's a really high dose of CBD isolate, and it may be interacting with your other pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it has sucralose in it, which triggers seizures.
Sucralose, right? And isn't that bad for autism? Because
like $32,000 a year when you could get a
right.
whole spectrum seizure targeted formula for about $1,500 a year.
Yeah,
it's better at 20 to 25% of the dose and not have that bell curve response. Like
it's
right deceptive. It's
I know.
Full pharmaceutical SOP strip away all of the medical benefit because they want to create customers, not real cures. That's what Epidiolex is.
Yes.
I'm a fan, can't you tell?
Yes. I just like popped the cork there. But for me too.
I can soapbox on so many topics.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, something about raising an individual with extra challenges leads to that kind of soapbox type activism, though.
Sometimes it's just like, wake up, people. Come on, wake up. Come on. Look at the logic. Don't listen to the politics. Don't listen to the media. Look at the logic. It's there.
Yeah.
The science is there.
Yep, and it's there's like a default mode. Yes. When you get somebody that wakes up to it, it's pretty cool. And and it is planting the seed. So where are you at now with, I don't want to go too far off. I want you to talk about what you're looking for in terms of support, where people can find you, what stage you're at, all that.
So our model is, we're so thankful that we have a model that we're able to kind of duplicate Nikki's Garden of Hope. I'm going to give them a little shout out. They reached out through you, Jill, because I met Adriana, and they're doing Nikki's Garden of Hope, which is a very similar model, but not including cannabis. So that's where it's a little different. But based on that model, we are doing a hybrid business model where we have for-profits feeding the nonprofits. So we're constantly seeking for-profits or for-profit ideas to help facilitate that. We have launched Unity formulas, which are my targeted recipes, and all of 100% of my profit for those recipes is going to Autism Safe Haven. We're launching some other programs to help feed it. Right now we're able to utilize some of the government funding to help with that, but we don't want to rely on that and rely on that continuing as it is right now, especially with this tumultuous political environment we're in right now.
Right.
We're so thankful to have Adriana and her input on how to do all of that. Autism Safe Haven, you can find at autismsafehaven.org. And I've done, there's a 17-minute video on there that's a nice overview.
It's excellent.
Reviews the science behind cannabis for autism and why it can be so big. And it kind of talks about the journey and how this became a passion for me, and also gets into the model more in depth.
Okay.
And we are able to accept donations. We have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. So all donations, even while we're waiting for our 501c3 designation, are going to be federally tax deductible. So we have that in place currently.
Excellent.
We're seeking donations and also, impact investors to the B Corp that's going to be feeding Autism Safe Haven as the 501c3. So, and all of the above. Anybody that's interested in this and wants to help support our mission, please check out our website, autismsafehaven.org.
Now, the Unity products, do you use those with your daughter, or do you grow? I mean, I guess I wanted to get at how that works with the whole, will you be growing on the site, or will you be?
It's kind of ironic. I grew for 5 years between 2015 and 2019 and had to pull the grow off of my property here in order to transition this into a cannabis inclusive autism care home.
Okay. Yeah.
But basically that's the law here. And so I did tear out the grow. I'm not growing currently. The Unity formulas are white labeled through one of the suppliers I've worked with and been custom blending for patients for many years. And they're symptom targeted. So we have like an anxiety formula and a sleep formula. These are all CBD hemp, so they can ship anywhere in the US and be totally legal. We have pain formulas for daytime and nighttime. We have a neuro support formula that's great for things like seizures or ADD, ADHD, and focus. And so those we also do custom blends and have a nurse line that you can call if you want a custom blend.
Oh,
so
cool.
we have that in place. And like I said, that's one of the businesses that's feeding Autism Safe Haven. That's how I was talked into finally doing it. Was okay,
Really?
fine. I benefit from the sales, and then I'm okay with it. So yeah, it's wonderful, and we have several people white labeling them and getting just all kinds of accolades. 70 to 80% success rate on a lot of them.
That's great.
Through the free nurse line, they can call and ask questions and get more guidance and help problem solve that way if needed. So
that's
really
good.
help as many patients as we can. So
wow, that's awesome.
Oh, and of course they all meet flow criteria, so they're medical quality. They're going to give patients most medical benefit possible in a targeted way.
Wow. Well, this is just incredible that you've brought this all together. I see that the pieces are really kind of falling into place. And in terms of the ABA and the therapies that you're going to implement, how does that look? How are you going? Do you have an idea of how you're going to, recruit caregivers or put those pieces together? And
right, yeah, and we're working on the caregiver agency right now.
Okay.
We've got somebody that's able to help with that and get us an SSRI number. We're able to bill Medicare and Medicaid. Okay. According to Oregon law, anybody that's listed as a caregiver can administer cannabis. So we're trying to figure out, does that need to be a nurse? Can that be one of the caregivers through the agency? We're really trying to have it be a fully integrated model. So we are overseeing every piece, because that really capitalizes on being able to use the profit to help those we're serving.
Gotcha.
So that's really the goal, is to have whatever we need built in. We have an ABA therapist. She's the one that's been working with my daughter for 6 years, and we're able to bill insurance for ABA for autism in Oregon. So that piece, pretty much everything is covered by insurance except for the cannabis itself, which now that Oregon has passed Measure 109 and 110 just yesterday.
Yeah.
We have legal psilocybin for medicine here. That might actually open up reimbursement for cannabis. So that's something we're looking at as well.
Great. Yeah, I know that there's some insurance in Massachusetts that will cover cannabis. I'm not sure how it works, but there are starting to be some, and I think there's certain parameters. Actually, it's not actually you know what it is? It's the medical part of it that they'll cover, like a doctor's appointment to talk about it, but they won't pay for the actual cannabis isn't covered. So
it's tough because and my thought is, gosh, if I need to move to a property and grow for the residents here, I'll do that myself. We're pretty well connected here, and I think we're going to be able to cover what we need in donations on the cannabis piece until we can charge for it. And although we're starting this launch in Oregon, our plan is to launch it, research the outcomes, show the cost, efficacy, and benefits compared to what's happening now, which is, a pharmaceutical and physical restraint model, and then duplicate it in every legal state.
Awesome.
And we also want to expand to more of a community model for those that, go through the behavior program and they're well managed and they're ready to move on to more of a focus on quality of life and learning job skills. And, we want to have a community where they're learning to work with animals and learning how to garden and learning how to do culinary skills and different things as able to really continue to promote that potential. So it's a multi-layer program.
I see. So it's not necessarily just residents. It could be the community at whatever level that they need support. They can be plugged in and then get involved in. Yeah.
Yep. Doesn't have to be. On the location for that. There's a place about an hour from here that it's a pre-existing lodge. So it's like an 8-room lodge, and then there's a dozen or so homes on this same 121 acre property.
Oh my goodness.
That'd be perfect. So I just need to come up with $5 million.
Okay.
It's good. So.
Yeah. I feel like you've got all the pieces, you've got the motivation, and I see the connections that you're making, and the impact investors. I think that's hopefully It'll work. I mean, the timing is great. And yeah, thank you so much for being on and going into detail on all these things. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah, so autismsafehaven.org for more information on Autism Safe Haven. Unity Formulas for the product line that's feeding Autism Safe Haven. For more on my background, my daughter's story, my story, all of my roles in the cannabis industry, which are many, jannachampagne.com.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll be talking to you soon. Okay, take care, Janna.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. And that is a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Wasn't Janna awesome? I will be posting in the show notes all of her links. Again, stay tuned for more on our virtual holiday market. Reach out, admin@tsctalks.com if you'd like to get involved. Stay tuned for more from the world of oppression and marginalization within the healthcare systems and systems of care. More support, more positivity. Love you all. And that is a wrap.